Hello, Mansour. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Good morning.
Excellent. So, obviously, we've done tons of interviews with your colleague Danny Rittman, of course, the CTO of the company. But we're excited to talk to you, who are, of course, the CEO of GBT. Could you give us a bit of background, maybe tell listeners who might not be aware a bit of your history with the company and how you came to take the role of CEO?
Yeah, so I will go a little bit back. So to give you a little history, company originally started in 2016 under a different name called Gopher Protocol. And at that time, the goal was to develop the Gopher Insight, what was a communication chip for telephones. And in 2019, I joined, I think around 2017 or 18, and did a little marketing for the company. And in the beginning was part-time, and then later I joined full-time. And in 2019, we had a little challenge. Everything was going great with the company. We had a little challenge. We had a big lawsuit, and unfortunately, fortunately, we settled this lawsuit beginning 2020, but that was really where a lot of those things changed. We also had a name change in 2019, which we changed out of a partnership, so it became GBT Technologies. And when we settled the lawsuit, unfortunately, a lot of, you know, lawsuit is always bad, stock looked bad, a lot of things happening. But at that time was 2020, was the beginning of COVID. And so we just settled, we just not settled, we prevailed in the lawsuit in January, end of January, beginning February. And then we, of course, wanted to go out again and raise money for our developments. And COVID literally, this whole crisis came with the stock market. There was not an investor who would invest in technology. And we actually, I still remember the day we had a little term sheet on my desk, actually a big term sheet. And the guys just called me and says, "Hey, we cannot do it. It's we don't know where this is going with with the week. It was a week where all stock went bananas, and so it got worse for us. We couldn't even raise money anymore at that stage. Our CEO left the company, or the CEO at that time. We had a couple of, or a bunch of board members leaving the company, and so we were left with a very skeleton crew. And I took over the position as a CEO at that point, in probably April 2020, and that's how I got to the CEO position. And since then, we changed a lot within the company from point of strategy, how we working on projects, and what we're doing, basically. And that's how I got here.
So, at this stage, the company focuses heavily on building an IP portfolio. Can you talk a bit about how you guys came to that strategy?
So this was an organic approach. So what happened in 2019? One of my hobbies is geopolitics. So I kind of saw this whole, what you see today, the Science Act and everything. I saw this already in 2019. I also saw that microchips, in my eyes, are going to be the future. I did another thing that says it's a gold of the future. But at that time, I was just working on the marketing side. When I became the CEO, I literally sat down with Danny, and Danny and I, turns out we are really good together in collaborating. We took all his ideas. I said, "Danny, hey, how many ideas what did you work on the last 4 or 5 years? Show me." And we had a huge list of technology. And I said, "Oh God, this is so much, so many great ideas. We don't have the money for this, and there's no way we can really develop it." And we got a little lucky because just before we had one or two patents. One patent was in tracking, and the other patent was just approved, was a 3D chip, the 3D multiplanar chip. And what happened then at that thing, we had a little positive feedback from the industry. There were some big companies who at least gave us phone calls. They wanted to inquire about the 3D chip. And so after looking at all this, we kind of, Danny and I said, look, from an economic point of view, number one, we should put our work where the business is. So we analyzed different areas of fast growing areas. I said it does not make sense to develop a piece of equipment for a market what is not moving. It has to grow. So we identified, and it's really the microchip area, the EDA, what is the Microchip Design area, AI, telehealth. So we identified 8 areas where we said, okay, those are areas where we're marking, where we're growing. The world is growing and will grow for the next 20 years. And then I said, look, we tried to do the Gopher Protocol, or Gopher Insight, the Gopher Insight chip many years ago. What failed? And the reality is, you need $25-50 million to develop a chip like this. I said, so we are really good in doing patents, or we have some good things about patents, but we are not so good in raising the money for a large project because we are a small company. So at that point, we together decided, we change, and I said, look, let's become an IP company. Let's try this for a year or two, and let's see where it gets us. And that was basically by the end of 2020. I took over in April. By the end of 2020, we kind of decided we're turning this company around into an IP company and concentrate developing patents in specific areas.
Now, as you say, that was early 2020 thereabouts. Can you talk a bit about the current status with patents submitted and approved so far?
Yeah. So this, I would call it. I would consider this a turnaround story. But let me just put it in numbers. In 2020, we had 2 patents, and we had and at that stage, we decided to concentrate on patents by the end of the year. We also had some feedback, presentation, some software in the EDA area, but we have an internal software package what we're working on the patents called Magic 2. It's basically for speeding up computer chip designs. And at that stage, what happened was we started to develop patents, and I made a goal, or I set some goals. And one goal was, at that time, was the money we had. We didn't have much. With the money we had, and with the structure we had, and the staff we had, we decided, I put a goal. I decided the goal. We didn't really decide. I said our goal is for end of 2023, so end of this year, to have around 20 patents approved. I just released a PR last week. What was a combination of this. And what really happened is that in December, we already had, in 2022, 10 patents approved and 26 pendings. That means so far we have a really good track record turning our submission into PR, into IP. So that means, in my eyes, we're already at 36 by the end of the year. Even if all not turning, but my goal is we already have reached our goal for 2023 and 2022. And that makes us very optimistic in a sense that we can continue to, do this patent. And I know, or go this IP way. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, IP, everybody needs to realize that IP is a confirmation that your technology can work. If it's developed, it's a different story, but it is a confirmation of some kind of a process. And with the budget we had, I think we did a tremendous job bringing all those patents together. And we now think we can do even better, and we're concentrating on that to increase our patent submission for this year.
No, and a lot of this comes down to your working relationship with Danny Rittman, as you mentioned. Could you talk a bit about the combined expertise in the company with Danny and how that kind of fits nicely into the patent strategy?
So good question. The Danny and I um, have similar and same backgrounds. So I'm more an economist, but I have electro-engineering background. Danny has a microchip background. He worked for all the big companies. So I always say we are kind of, I see the economical side and economics and the politics on technology, and he sees the technology. So many ideas. It's crazy, but we kind of channeling it now together, and we work on it together all the times. Shall we do this, or shall we do this, or in which area? So we kind of more focused now, developing those patents and IP, and I think that is the reason why, because of the focus and because of the areas we're focusing in, now we've had such at least success in creating valid patents, and that's really what it is.
You mentioned earlier the microchip space. Can you expand on that? Talk a bit about why microchips are such a fast-growing sector.
So there is a lot of geopolitics involved here long term. I'm not going to go into geopolitics, but the reality is that everything we do will depend on microchips in the future. Yeah, everybody says AI great and technology great, and but it's not just this; it's everything else. Um, we have 7 billion people on this earth. All the second and third level countries are slowly coming up in their technology. They will need um, a vacuum, a car. It's not just the phones. The phones are high nanometer chips. They are like super advanced. But if you want to run your TV, or you want to run a power supply, you want to run your car, you go with less advanced chips. And all those billions of people who coming online in the next 50 years or 60 years are going to need more chips. We will probably triple or quadruple our chips needs. And we need advanced chips for AI, but we also need regular computer chips for just running our vacuum or running our TV or running our toaster. IoT is a whole different world. Everybody wants to talk and exchange information. And so the world is forecasting that microchips will grow from $677 billion, what was the last 2 years, to almost 1.3 trillion in the next 2-3 years. The Chips Act from Biden has done another step into this direction. A matter of fact, they're closed off China in the advanced arena, and so the whole world is looking for rerouting the supply chain. People will come back to the United States and produce. Europe wants to produce. India wants to produce chips. The Middle East wants to produce chips. And so everybody gets into the game because everybody sees that this is long term. Who's going to lead the world in economics? And that's why it's very important. It's nothing what happens tomorrow, but it will manifest over the next 10, 20 years.
Now, getting back to the big picture strategy, in terms of building equity with patents, what is the company's short and long-term plan?
So number one, let me put it this way. The short-term plan is obviously to finish 2023. And the reason why we finish 2023, we have to finish. Patents are normally coming in form of families. So we have an EDA family, for example, electronic design automation. We have a microchip family for microchip manufacturing, our 3D chip. And just two of them, we have a telehealth family. And what you never do one patent. It's in the electronic world, it's very, very rare that you're going to sell one patent. What you normally do is you go out and and create a family around it for protection. Because every company tries to, once they see a patent, they try to go around it. So we need this year to finish our families, to do the protection. And we take this year to basically do this. And then our goal is, maybe we find somebody earlier, but our goal is really then to find a licensed partner or a buyer for those patents. And so right now is to finish the families, and then a little bit more midterm is to find some large partner, JV or large company, who's developing our 3D chip, our EDA, our telehealth areas, and bringing it, finishing it and making it a real product, what you can touch and feel.
Now, to tie things all together, for long-term shareholders as well as newcomers, can you just summarize for us the real benefits of the whole company's turnaround in strategy to focus on IPs?
So I will give an example to just, obviously there had to be a decision made in 2020, and we made the decision. And you can argue with me. I have shareholders calling us all the time. You can argue with me. This was, I didn't like it. I like it. It was a decision. But the way I would explain the decision is very simple. We in 2020 could have tried to use a product and develop a product, and maybe have some electronic gadget and sell it 10,000 pieces in the first year, 20,000 and next year, over 5 years, 50,000, and maybe, create $10 million in sales. Maybe $15 million in sales, maybe even $2 million in net profit, and shareholders especially in the penny stock arena would have been super happy, and the stock would have performed well and everything. But it would have been, how much would the company be worth? $2 million, earnings or profits, maybe $5 million, $10 million, depending on the overhead, salespeople, manufacturing, all those expenses. It's a risk. Okay. What I said is, okay, it will take us at least 5 years to build anything. We have to clean up, all our infrastructure, all our past. Let's clean up. Let's go and get rid of convertible notes. Let's clean up our books, and let's concentrate on IP, and concentrate on IP in areas where they are really, really needed. And so now we have a bunch of patents, and theoretically, any of those patents overnight could be worth huge amounts of money. I don't want to make a prediction because I'm not allowed to, but if you just think like our 3D chip, it's really, if you have a 3D chip and it's a manufacturing, this is not an Intel vs Intel. This is a manufacturing approach that works for all chips, for all sizes, what could improve everything beyond 2 nanometers. And so now I say, this chip, what is it worth if you grab 10% of this market on a licensing deal? We could turn this idea alone could be overnight worth many, 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 many multiplications of that $5 million. And that's how I see it. When it comes to shareholder value, I think building an IP in a really great area has a better upside for the shareholders in the long term. Is it a risk? Both ways are a risk in any way, shape, or form. And we decided to concentrate on the IP because the upside is so much higher.
Now, Mansour, that brings us to the end of the questions I've got for you today. But is there anything else you want to add or expand on before we end it?
Yeah. So I hope our shareholders, so far, any shareholder I talk to, even we realized that pricing went down, but every shareholder I talked to liked our approach. So we are finally in our core competence. That means it turns out we are really good building IP and patents, and instead of doing other things and getting a little bit distracted over here and over here and over there, we now focusing. And I think that is the lesson we have learned, and that's a turnaround lesson we have exercised over the last 2 years. And we think it's going to be a really interesting end of the year. And maybe our goal is, instead of having 30 patents, maybe have 50 or 60. And that would be very exciting.